I've worked for the company for 4 years. I've worked in the bedding industry for a lot longer than that. I've worked for very large companies like Steinhoff, 20 billion euros worldwide, large company doing lots of group projects, into Hypnos, a family-owned business that's very focused on sustainability, circular economy, and making comfort in our way that we think is important. And I would add that, what I'm going to talk to you about today, I'm trying not to be controversial and upset anybody. That's not the case. But I think if it gives us an opportunity to talk about things at the end, that would be great. So I think Angela touched on it, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I've put lots of slides together today. I haven't really practiced them, but I can talk a lot, so that's okay. But the circular economy, we've got the, as my linear diagram shows, the take, make, and dispose model through to the recycling model through to a fully circular model. So there are stages of where we can get to. Do I think that if we're not circular, it's bad? Not necessarily, because I think we can do things with other materials and not necessarily bring them back to where they are, but as long as we housekeep them, create an infrastructure for them, then we can look after those materials once we've used them. I'm currently in my last year of doing a master's at Cranfield University. It's one of the 6 pioneer universities that work with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And Ellen MacArthur, some of you will be aware of this sort of butterfly diagram where you've got the technical circular economy on one side and the biological circular economy on the other side. Now, I'm here today to talk to you about the green side, the biological side, but I'm also going to touch base on the technical side as well, where I think there is a problem that we all need to be aware of. Okay, so recently, I'll just get my finger out. Recently subscribed to National Geographic, and these are some of the front covers and some of the photography that you'll have seen around, stereotypical turtles with plastic and things like that. It's a funny story with plastic and turtles because they used to use the turtles for buttons. So the tortoiseshell buttons was the horn-billed turtle. And so Mr. Burke invented plastic and made plastic to stop the turtles being... You see the irony that's coming here. But it's interesting how we're exposed to it, how our customers are exposed to it. It's not just that. And I was showing Jessica a picture of the new... If you all get your phones out and have a look at the Barbie website, I do this quite frequently. But Barbie has 4 new dolls. And you've got the doctor, the professor, the sustainability CEO, and they all come with a phone and handbag. But they're made from different types of plastic. And the point being is that our children, and I like Angela's point, these are our stakeholders. And in our business, we should view future generations as a stakeholder of our business because that's what we do today in the classic sustainability definition, impacts on those and what we do in the future and so on and so forth. So we need to be really careful of that. I wanted to talk to you about plastic because it leads to why our decision as a business goes more towards the natural circular economy. So if we look at this chart here, which is produced, it's not me saying, I'm not making it up to suit my argument, but the UN Environmental Programme and the American Chemical Society, the latter sounds, interesting, but they are a lobbyist group for the American plastics industry. So 9.2 billion tonnes of plastic have been produced to date since 1950, roughly. 465 million tonnes of plastic are produced a year, roughly, since 2018. And if we look at the impact of that on this chart, the last 10 or 15 years, we've produced half of the plastic we've ever produced. Okay. In the USA alone, 203 billion has been invested in 343 new or expanded chemical plants to produce plastic. 700 million tonnes of the plastic, that 9.2 million that we produced today, has been recycled. 6.3 billion tonnes has been discarded. So that's either in landfill or it's in the oceans or it's there, but it's not there available to be recycled for us unless we find other ways. There are industries now mining landfill sites to get metals and plastics and other materials out of them. But, it's infancy stuff. And as I said, half of the plastics have been made in the last 15 years. And when you look at the prediction where we're heading to, there's over, a billion tonnes of plastic predicted to be produced by 2050. So all of us are standing here going, we're going to reduce our carbon footprints, and we're going to do this. But this is going on in the background, and it doesn't appear to be stopping. So I think, using recycled plastic is good. But, what is the impact of plastic production on the world? So the background of this picture, and I'll come to it, is the Pan-Pacific island of plastic. You may have heard of this. It's growing every year. The stats that I've given you are going to mean it's going to grow even further. But we put, by 2040, it's predicted to put 29 million tonnes of plastic into the ocean every year. That's despite all our recycling efforts. That includes the efforts that we're all predicting to do around this table today. So I know it seems a bit doom and gloom, but I want to paint some punchy sort of picture to say, if there's anything we can do coming out of this room, what are you going to do different tomorrow, having sat in this room today? So we want to have an impact. We want to make everybody think in the room. We want to have collaborative efforts, as Angela's put, to see what we can do to make things better as an industry. So I'll skip through this because I'm going to run out of time, but you can see where I'm heading with all of this. That Pan-Pacific island is twice the size of Texas, 3 times the size of France, 6 times the size of the UK, to put it in context, in land mass of plastic. So Tony, if he's not here, he's not going to get his boat through that lot. It's fact. Yeah, no, it's gone to port. So, and just to put a context of our plastic recovery system, I think we're failing in the UK in terms of how we manage our waste. It's a real shame. We're behind Europe. We're behind other countries. We export 60% roughly of our waste to other countries. China's stopped taking that waste because they want cleaner plastic. They've come on board. They're doing lots more. My colleague David, our MD, used to work in the shower industry, and he said the way China have cleaned up the chromium and the pollution acts around rivers has really moved on, and they're ahead of other countries in that regard. And they said, no, we don't want your waste. We don't want it anymore. So what do? We send it to other countries. We have social issues with all of that, children burning the rubbish in the fields, and there's lots of work going on. And I think Angela, the lady that you work with, Lucy, I've just finished reading or listening to her book on my Audible, and she's a big proponent of anti-plastic, does lots of beach work and things like that, and her book's quite, if you get a chance to get it on Audible or read it, it's really good. The data it's published 2018, so the data you can add 10% to, roughly, to where we are today, but yeah, it's really interesting, very impactful and insightful. And then we look at plastic. I've put this little, you won't be able to see it, but it's in the deck when you get this later on. But we've got different types of plastic as well. So, we put all these things in the plastic bin at the end of the day. And we're not chemists, are we? We don't know what we're putting in the bin, essentially. And that is LDP. That's category number 6, the red one on the end. So, what does that mean? And it's about having ownership of it. And I think as industries. If we look at how we get rid of our rubbish and say, well, it goes in the bin, I've got a compactor, I do ISO 14001, I separate my rubbish, I put my plastic, my cardboard and all of that in there, even get paid for it, which is good. But I don't know where it really goes after that, at that point. Does it go to a centre? Is it being offshored? I don't know. And we could be better at owning that as a business. We could make more demands of our supply chains. We're paying for that service, so what are you doing with it? I want to know more. So, yeah, challenge for the different types of plastics. I think Angela touched on monomaterial design. It's a fantastic idea, how we can get to there. In particular, Jess is, one of the things we can do in industry is not blend. So cotton with polyester, bad. Polyester on its own? OK, we'll live with that. Cotton on its own, we can live with that. I recently went to Lensing Fibres, the people that make Tencel and stuff like that. They've got a big factory in Grimsby. So went to Grimsby, had a good look round, and they're trying to develop a circular economy with clothing to make it into a second cellulose, into a fibre. Their challenge is feedstock. They can't get enough. You wouldn't believe it, would you? We all wear cotton. Where's it all go? Where's the feedstock? So that is a challenge. And I would say, I've touched on some of the things that with plastic. I think, Tony, your business should be commended, because one of the things that is, from a recycling of plastic perspective is mechanical recycling is okay to a point, but you lose the molecular structure and the strength of it after 2 or 3 cycles because of the heating process. And then you have to have more virgin in, which helps fuel the virgin side. And I do think from a lobbying point of view from the chemical industry, they do really support the recycled industry because they want to produce more virgin, and it hides what they're doing in the background to some degree. So for me, plastic isn't bad, but we've got to own it to own it really well, and we've got to make sure we know where our responsibilities are for that product in the supply chain, in our products, end of life, and so on and so forth. One of the other challenges, it's just cheaper to produce virgin plastic than it is. And then we go back to that point that Angela made. We make beds that are mid to top ends. It's all right me preaching about natural and stuff when I do that, but there are individuals that need to buy beds at certain prices, and how do we do that in a sustainable way? And that's part of the challenge. So I'm going to skip over this because I know time's short, but just to finish on, yeah, I will, but yeah, I'll get on it. I've spoken about those things. But just to be cataclysmic, just to end this section of my presentation, we are on a tipping point. That transition word that has been used can't be emphasised enough. We have to change. We can't just carry on doing what we're doing. We can't consume what we're doing. We need to look at all these methods. We need to take responsibility as manufacturers, designers, architects, what we put in our buildings, all these things we have to consider. We do it. And the problem is, everybody in this room agrees, don't you? It's the people that aren't here is the challenge. So I wanted to get onto sort of what we do as a business, and I said there's no rights or wrongs here, but this is how we approach things. So we sort of look at it in a biological circular economy. We're looking at how natural materials can be put together in our products to create the comfort and the experience that we want with our customers. We look at how we bring those products into the market. I've got a case study that I'll talk about on nettles in a minute, but we've done lots of work on wool. So we've created sort of traceable supply chains back to the farm. We've worked with Red Tractor to create a standard to do that. We've just introduced the first 5 responsible wool farms in the UK and in Europe. They don't exist in this part. So we're on a real journey in terms of how we work with our wool. So that's now, those responsible wool farms are also working on regenerative methods. So we're looking after the carbon capture and monitoring of that. So we know that the comfort, that we put in our beds for our customers is great because it's wool, but we're also looking after that sort of health and well-being of the customer, the planet, and supply chains at the same time. That includes things like fair pay, because we've all seen the press on British wool farmers, and it's a very high suicide rate within the farming community. So we're doing what we can from our perspective to transform the wool side of things. When we look at the bioeconomy, we're looking at 3 areas of impact. So food, land, ocean use, infrastructure, and built environment. Now, we supply beds that go into a built environment, okay? But we use energy, we use extraction, we use food, land, and other things to create that product that goes into there. So we impact as an industry, whether it's beds, whether it's the timber for my furniture, it's being produced and it's made into something. So we impact in different ways in those areas. So it's really thinking about those areas and deconstructing them. So how can I do it differently to some regards? Okay. I won't go through all of these because it's in the pack, but I was going to say Prince Charles, but King Charles III is the patron of the Circular Bioeconomy Alliance, and they're very, very forward in talking about different ways, that transformational way of how we can work with nature to transform our future, essentially. So it's a 10-step program, working with our supply chains, working with our business, working with our design and products at the end of the day. So it's a stepped plan. It will be different to everybody in this room, as sustainability is different to everybody in this room. We produce beds, other people produce tables, other people import tables, whatever. So, you're going to look at it through a different lens. So have a read of that afterwards. The interesting bit for me is this. I love this figure. So right-hand side is the green side, so we're looking at all of our natural fibres. And for me, when I say we're not going to use foam and we're not going to use other things that we don't value in a product, it means my window of innovation opportunity is quite narrow. So we have to kiss, I use the phrase, David laughs at me, we kiss a few frogs and we occasionally get a prince. So it's that idea of having 100 bad ideas and one that pays the rent. So keep that R&D journey going. Jessica's done some work before, and we've got some contacts in R&D, tax credits and all of that type of thing. So if you're doing it, invest, and make sure you're claiming your R&D tax credits as well. So we look at all these fibres, we look at them from a cellulose point of view, we look at them from a protein point of view, but then we whip over to what they call the manufactured side, or almost the technical side. And there are still things that Hypnos value in that side. We do value latex. I quite like latex. It's, from our point of view, providing we get the right type of latex, it's not got synthetic content and so on and so forth. I like PLA, but I don't like PLA that's the polylactic acid, the starch that binds our wool together. I don't like it if it's genetically modified, so I've had to find the one manufacturer in the world that isn't American that makes non-GMO PLA. And you just have to kiss those frogs and find those opportunities. And we've taken as a view as a business to say, look, with the wool, I just don't want to accept the norm. I don't want to accept what's there. So, you don't have to do that. You can change your supply chains. You can do something different and embrace, a different way of doing things. It's hard work. But then I would say, David, you'll hopefully back me up, we've had our best January ever in our business, because we've changed things around and we're attracting a different customer base. Our average prices are higher because we've embraced, aspects of sustainability that people and our customers value. So, we shouldn't be ashamed of making profit from sustainability. We talked about these pillars earlier, and the economy works up and down that value chain. It's good for our consumers, it's good for us as business, it's great for our supply chains. And I noticed one of my colleagues from John Cotton's there, he loves it when he wants to give me a pad that costs 7 times as much as the polyester pad that I was buying. Look how happy he is at the back there. So, but he also hates all the development that comes with it. But, sorry, Ken. And then I would also be remiss if we didn't talk about regenerative farming and how we get to those things. So looking after, you've heard about there's a tsunami coming of, and I think it was on your 10-year list at point number 4, biodiversity loss is one of those things that is one of the things that come. If you take that in 20 years' time, that will be number 1. Because yes, climate change is up there, but it's viewed as one of the biggest things that faces humanity. The way that we put chemicals into the soil, the way that we kill microsystems, the way that you knock one thing over and make something extinct, and that has an impact, the domino effect, and all of a sudden we've got no food chain and blah, 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 disaster. So we've got to think about how we employ those materials, the natural materials, and say, I want natural materials, but I can't spray them with all these bad things. I need to look at it in a different way. So we go to our farmers and say, I don't want you to do that, but we're going to pay you more for that. I'm going to pay you more, but I'm going to cut all these other people out. So actually I'm doing it in a different way. I'm changing the economic model to get what I want, but I don't necessarily have to charge my customer that much more. There is some premium there, but it's not that much more. And then I want to talk to you about one of the case studies. And I did think, should I go for the wool, but it's a bit boring. So I want to talk to you about our Himalayan nettle project. So we were looking at opportunity to find naturally organic fibres, and for me that is about how do we get something that's subsistent, that we can harvest, that grows back each year. And we came across an American lady called Ellie Skeel, and Ellie was an IT lady quite successful in the Silicon Valley, and she was doing a project in Nepal with some children putting in some IT equipment, and she was looking at this fantastic fibre and going, how do I do this? And all of a sudden she stopped and went, I'm going to make a social business out of this. So she started this Himalayan wild fibres project. The idea is that we engage with the subsistent hill farmers in the Himalayas. We work with them to protect the forest situation. So they're not cutting down trees, they're harvesting wild nettles that grow naturally, respreading the seeds. The root systems stay in the ground, it grows again, it's sort of perennial by nature. And we're harvesting that to create basically lovely fibres. For our bed, very similar to hemp and flax and how we get to it. But what this does is not only produce a sort of really nice natural fibre that requires absolutely no chemical input, no nothing, it's just a harvest. I should also mention that, and I'll come on to it in a minute, but I'll probably skip over that side, is that the workforce on the Himalayan subsistence is mainly female, because all the men go off and work somewhere else and come back 6 months later. So you're left with, a hillside croft subsistence farming, very little income, very difficult life to live. And what we're trying to do is create this program, and the ultimate goal is to give it back to the female farmers so that they can run it as a business and supply us with that. We started, we took advice from our charity partners, education partners at the Eden Project. We're working with Benson's for Beds on creating a story for this and putting it into their products to create a volume. We've now got our mattress ticking supplier has now got the yarns to weave into to fabric for us, and we want to share that with the market because we need to create volume. So they're going to off to America to sell lots of nettle fabric. We're going to use it in the UK for our products and hopefully create a better income supply chain for these people. It's such a good project. I think you talked about impact summary, so I thought, well, don't say too much, Angela. So please. So we do, and we look at it, and it's an honest assessment of it's not perfect. It uses some water, it uses transport and things like that. So this is an impact summary. There's really good aspects of what we do with the fibre, and then it's about using this and looking at your gap analysis and saying, how can I prove in these particular hours, how areas, and how can I improve on that? One of them is, just getting it to ourselves and the packaging element that comes with it to the spinners to get into the yarn to come into bed. So not perfect. I'm not saying it is, but it's a really good step. It ticks lots of boxes, certainly within all three pillars of sustainability. They work with the W Plus programme, and they work in different sectors in terms of where we want to improve the well-being of the workforce and the team and the colleagues that work within that environment. We talk about, I don't know if anybody else uses the Sustainable Development Goals as their sort of toolkit for evaluating their own business, but I highly suggest you do. Look at materiality matrices. It's an accounting practice, but really look at your business, look at your purpose, redefine what you do, and then stem backwards from there and look at all your activities. But UN goals are really good to sort of just say, I'm ticking these areas quite well. I'm weak in this area. There's a gap. What can I do? So, but in this project, it's hitting quite a few of those UN goals. And just to finish, and I'm sorry I sort of rant on, I get quite excited about this subject matter, and I was trying to think how do I slow myself down? So for me and our business, if I was selling this presentation to our shareholders, and it's not necessarily to you, but I'm saying I don't want to use plastic, I think it's bad, unless we develop different ways of doing it. Because all I see is, yes, it's good to use recycled plastic, but all I'm seeing is Virgin doing this. And whatever we do, we've got to use, we can't use as much recycled as what is being produced, because we've discarded most of it. It's in the oceans. So, and then people say, well, why don't we just get it out the oceans? Well, again, we go back to all the different types of plastic. It's really hard to get some value to that. It's expensive to pull it out the ocean. So I think law is the best framework to make us all do what we do. If we look at the car industry and look how the transformation to, the Fords, the Volvos, everybody has gone, I have to have electric cars. So yeah, we'll get on with it. And I think it just happens, doesn't it? And I think, Jessica, you touched on that. Until we have legal framework, and anybody that's sitting in the audience from government, you need to do this. You can't do it quick enough. So, and then it's about R&D, kissing the frogs, to get the princes within your business, do the things you need to do to create a point of difference for your brand, but also make a difference for now and for future generations. That's it. I won't waffle on anymore. Are there any questions? Thank you.
I was glad to see that you got a virgin pet.
Yeah.
Or should I?
I nearly brought in drinky poos, but I didn't. I held back. Yeah.
Well, we do need to move on, but obviously, needless to say, please do catch Richard at the end of today's sessions. But that was fantastic. And I think one of the points that keeps coming up in all these presentations, and something I feel absolutely passionate about, is how can it possibly, sorry, just 1 minute, let me finish my point of passion. How can it possibly be cheaper to buy new than reuse? So, sorry. Fee, there's your introduction. Fiona and I have worked together a lot, and Fiona is working for an SME business. I think that's fair to say, isn't it? In the outskirts of London, but most importantly, they're really focused on reuse. So over to you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm the last gig of the day. Hope to keep you all as entertained as the previous speakers. My name is Fiona Edwards, as Joe says. I'm head of sustainability from a furniture dealership called JPA Workspaces. So we are a slightly different entity to most other people in the room. We're also a FISP member, and we use that certification and that knowledge to help us with our progress along the sustainability route. So I want to thank Joe for inviting me here today and talk to you about our experience furniture reuse and furniture, or prolonging sort of furniture useful life. Whoops. There we go. Super.
Sorry, I was getting some puzzled looks from behind, but they couldn't hear it.
I get puzzled looks a lot, oddly. So, Houston, we have a problem. And the reason we have the problem is because we're running out of stuff. We're running out of the resources so freely available to us for the last few decades to make what we want when we want. Over 40 million trees are felled every day globally. We just simply, as an example, we just simply cannot sustain this rate of consumption. There's a really good paper I read recently called The Elephant in the Room by the World Resources Institute, which I'd recommend everybody has a quick gander at. You only need to read the first couple of pages, but it's startling. We are running out of resources. Our making and buying habits haven't been helpful to the planet. Overconsumption and needless waste have led to a carbon and biodiversity crisis. And on top of that, we're also running out of stuff. Couldn't be better. So these are the climate stripes. I don't know who's familiar with them, but the ones on the left are the warming stripes developed by Professor Ed Hawkins from the University of Reading, which show how the planet has got warmer incrementally over the last 150 years, with the last 50 years on the right moving increasingly from blue to red. The stripes on the right are the biodiversity stripes, which basically show in essence, a 70% global decrease in biodiversity since 1970. In the UK, our biodiversity decrease since 1970 is about 50%. In 50 years' time, we could well have nothing left if we keep going at this rate. So, ever the optimist, change is needed. We need to do things differently. We need to do things differently, not just in our businesses, but in every household, in every role, every area of our life. We have to do things differently now. We need a different way of behaving. So what can we all do right now to slow down the rate of natural resource consumption and its catastrophic effects? And how about, I'm a bear with a very simple brain. I don't get complicated things. So our simple company approach to this is, how about we work with our clients and our supply chain to consume less, to buy better, to use it for longer, and then when we can try and get those resources back into at worst recycling, but reworking or remanufacturing chains if that's at all possible. Something that we can all be looking at now through our operations, our products and our services. Aha! I'm very proud of this. This is what we've called JPA the furniture iceberg. Furniture industry, there is a lot of emphasis and a lot of attention on the top of the iceberg, the shiny bit, the bits above water, the part that we can see. It's easy to access, and it really normally sort of has to do with manufacturer purchasing specification. The part that's under the water is much bigger. It's dirtier, it's dark, it's difficult to get at, and that's where the resources of everything we've bought lay. This is the area we need to attack in order to get those resources working for us longer, working for us harder at a higher value, and keeping them in use for as long as we possibly can do. Maybe a useless office furniture stat, but over 1.2 million office desks and 1.8 million task chairs go to landfill every year in the UK. We just simply can't keep going on at this rate. And it looks like this. We've all seen this. This is the dirty side of the iceberg. This is what it looks like underneath. The built environment accounts for about 39% of global emissions. And within that, furniture can account for up to 30% of that. And that's generally because of frequent use and unnecessary replacement for cosmetic purposes rather than it just doesn't function anymore. Simply buying less, using it longer, and trying to get those materials back into some form of reworking is surely the answer. So at JPA, within my company, we're a little company. We're not a high flyer by any means. One of the ways we address this is by maximising or capitalising on our local approach. We have local infrastructure, local resources, we have our own fitting team, we have our own warehousing. When we supply furniture to our clients, we stay with it and them for life. If they need a problem, we can fix it on a milk run. They're local enough to be able to do that. And we can work with them to get their furniture up to warranty and beyond, and then into second life, then into third life. Then we have a community furniture rehoming programme. Then we have a spare parts programme. And if all else fails, then it'll go to materials recycling. I firmly believe that it's the locality of this makes it possible. And there's all sorts of partnerships. I'm very excited about the future to be worked out with dealers and manufacturers and resource hubs and product hubs. And all of this is to be discovered over the next 10 to 15 years. Really great news is we don't have to do it all in the next 12 months. When we're speaking to our clients, we just say there are 5 easy ways that you can help use and reuse your furniture products for longer. When you're buying new, buy it better, buy less. Pick things with longer warranties. Ask more questions. Where does it come from? Who's making it? Where is it? Is it flying in? Is it being shipped in by lorry? Does it have any circular properties? And also, if we're buying better quality, it might just have some second life resale potential, some inherent value down the line that we can offset that against our next refurbishment. Consider reusing and repairing legacy items. Consider pre-loved. Why not? Let's make second life furniture really cool. If it's made well to start with, furniture can go on and on and on. Explore how furniture waste can be reworked into other items. What a interesting, exciting, creative avenue that's going to be for us all in the future. What can we do with our waste? How can we transform it? That's it. Transform it into something. You see, it's been a long day. And then finally, the least we could do is eliminate landfill. Make sure that any waste we do have, anything that's redundant, just doesn't go into the ground. Surely that is ultimately very doable. There's so much value to be gained from addressing reuse with measurable wins right away that cross the triple bottom line. We need to be communicating this with our clients with an intention to develop this further, because it will help our own chances of growth and future success. The wins include procurement savings, cost of waste savings, greater clarity on our clients' own environmental performance, reportable carbon savings. I'm a bit of a bee in my bonnet at the minute about the accuracy of carbon data for furniture, because we're all using different measures, and some are cradle to gate, some are cradle to grave, some are EPA, some are EPD, some are benchmarks. So I just kind of use an industry average of about 50 kilos per piece of furniture, just whilst all the applications and things sort of refine themselves and become more commonplace in a couple of years' time. But the value that we can give to our clients now, that we can help them show that they're also thinking ahead. They're also transformational leaders. This kind of stuff can help them attract the staff that they need for the future. It's a ripple effect. You throw a stone in somewhere and the ripples will ripple. Oh, see, I've just lost the plot now completely. Summing that page up, if it can't be recycled, just refuse it. Recycled or reused, just refuse it. This is a summary of a recent project we did which focused on reuse. We reworked 240 items back into the scheme. We saved approximately 7 tonnes of carbon over new through doing that, but the client saved £29,000 in spend, and that's the killer. The procurement officer is happy, the environmental officer is happy, the waste officer is happy. There are multiple wins on multiple levels. It's really important to start gathering this kind of data. It's not foolproof, it's not pinpoint accurate, but it's a direction, and it enables us to start seeing what the savings are that we can begin to make. Who says reuse has to be boring? 100 metres of stud wall timber and 3 redundant timbers would say otherwise. So this is a reception counter we made out of stud wall timber, and these tall parts are redundant tabutes with clever metalwork. It doesn't have to be boring, and that's where it's exciting that we can get creative with our redundant materials. Christoph, who's in the room here, with the stools from the chargeable bed legs, would also agree, I'm absolutely sure. All the task chairs and all the desk frames in this image have been reworked and reused. Nobody's any the wiser in this building, but wouldn't it be great to make this more visible? If we could make it visible, it would be really cool. If we reupholster a task chair, one of these Almere chairs here, and don't tell anyone, it's just the same chair. If we reupholster it and put a lovely shiny label on it, suddenly it's the coolest thing since school. We've got to somehow increase the visibility of things that we are reusing, because then we'll... If this was a chair that was reupholstered in my office, I just walk past it, whatever. If it has a label on it, I can guarantee all of our staff will be going, "Oh, this is amazing!" They will fall in love with it straight away. If we can raise the visibility of reuse, we are halfway there. Another job, this client wanted to just not destroy any more natural habitats through their furniture, through their refurbishment. They picked second life items. The brief was to source as much second life as we possibly could do, 2,000 items, give or take, 60 tonnes of carbon, give or take, and a whopping £250,000 furniture savings over new. It works on every level. And because we're local, we work with them, we support them with the furniture, we underwrite any warranties, we give our own warranties. And if there are issues, because the quality of furniture is good to start with, it will just keep on going. Finally, a little cheeky furniture swap. 2 London universities. One had almost 400 chairs they didn't know what to do with. Another one needed 400 chairs. It's simple, isn't it? We need to put people in touch with each other and figure out how we can all collectively use our waste. So 397 chairs, about 14 tonnes of carbon, about £19,000 in furniture spend saved. And if we can do this as an SME, and we're just teeny tiny, we're just minnows in the sort of office furniture industry, imagine if we could all, the sum total of our marginal gains, imagine what we could achieve. A little bit about landfill. General consensus is we all hate landfill today. So my analogy with landfill, it's a bit like tidying up your bedroom like I used to when I was a kid by stuffing everything under the bed. Kind of out of sight, out of mind. You can't see it, but actually the problem's still there and got to be dealt with. As well as the whole host of associated nasties that go with landfill, it's needless. It's absolutely needless, and we need to get those materials back into some form of reuse or recycling. Nearly there, you'll be pleased to know. As well as the raft of legislation that's coming, the procurement guidelines, the increased public demand, our manufacturers are all busy designing products and systems that are less carbon and materials hungry and more circular in nature. As well as that, we try and work with our clients to give them some take-home points. Namely, there is no point in buying something which is really environmentally sound and then sticking it in a skip when you've finished with it. Really no point. When you're buying something, you really need to consider decommissioning at the point of purchase and build that into the bid. There is no point that is buying something that is 95% recyclable if there's no recycling route for it. What is the point? It's just madness. And finally, the partnership part, finding partners and who will work with us to maintain our products for longer, whether that's washing machines, whether that's furniture, whether it's beds, whether it's... We need people to stay with their products for longer, maintain them, support them, and then when we no longer need them, get them easily back into reworking, remanufacture or recycling. Laws of changing behaviours say that unless it's satisfying, easy, accessible, measurable, we just won't do it. And let's face it, we're a really lazy lot, and otherwise we just won't do it. No, I rather like this quote. I have lots of enthusiasm generally, works for me. My husband loves the Apollo 13 movie, especially the scene where it's all just hit the fan and difficult decisions and choices have to be made. This could be the biggest disaster ever to hit mankind, Or alternatively, in the words of Gene Kranz, Apollo 13 mission director, this could be our finest hour. If we can actually work together, develop partnerships and innovations across the supply chain, we can do great things. And I'm really looking forward to exploring those options over the next decade or so, because they won't all fall out of the woodwork tomorrow. But we can do this together. And thank you so much for your time and humouring me. Thank you.
It may seem odd talking about reuse and the savings that are offered to clients through reuse when I'm sat in a room with furniture manufacturers, but we have to accept that it's the direction of travel, and there is still money to be made from this new world, this new circular world. We just have to work out how to do it. But please do continue the debate. Could I ask each of the speakers to come to the front, because I've been asked for a photograph of everybody all together, and I can't tell you how pleased I am how the day's gone. My feedback has been that everyone's really enjoyed it. It was difficult to know when we talked about it as a committee, getting the level right, because we knew some people would know a lot and other people may not know much at all. Some people come from the retail sector, some come from the contract sector. But I'd like to think we've managed to merge it and blend it well enough, and certainly the feedback I've had has been very positive. So thank you all for coming. Really appreciate it. The sheer number means that it was worthwhile. So thank you. And let's keep working and collaborating and make that change. So thanks very much.